We always develop and offer different opportunities during the summer that are either for the students to do a research immersion or to work on a specific project on campus. And what we have started most recently is to looking at opportunities off campus. So last summer, we put together a pilot, which was this project on construction, sustainable construction, and sustainability. And the idea was that given the contemporary issue and the problems that we have in Puerto Rico due to the hurricane, there was so much devastation. And almost a year later, there was still, many problems. And many of those that you will look and you'll think, these are all things that have engineering can solve those. And the question is why things have not been resolved, why the construction still has a problem, why they don't have electricity. So we figured that we will put together a class that will be a pilot, and we will just send some students, and we build this program in partnership with a university in Puerto Rico, but we wanted this to be more of a hands-on experience, so we team up with an engineering firm, with an architecture firm, with a foundation that will reach out of the community, and we also team up with the municipality so that we will have that aspect of the community. So we were able to put together all the details of this pilot a little bit too late. Classes has been already, completed, and then it started the pointing to, who will go. And we find out that there were always also an issue that for some of the activities that they were planned, the people in the community would only speak Spanish. So, we didn't want anyone to miss the opportunity to understand. So we needed to put some restrictions that at least the student who wanted to go needs to declare that they will be willing to struggle a little bit with the language. So at the end of the day, we have several applicants and we sort out. And we ended up with 3 students. I'll introduce them. This is Chris Riley. This is Lukasz, your last name, Lukasz? Kupiec, and Zachary Anderson. So the 3 of them, went and spent 2 full weeks. There was an immersion. They spent really 7 to 7. They were really, working hard. I went with them for the first couple days so that we will make contact with the different partners. We will set up the instructors locally, so we will review the syllabus. And I have to say that I learned a lot in those 2 days. We visit different places and talk to different partners. So the purpose of today is that I wanted to give you this general introduction. I wanted to let you know that we are trying to put together more courses of this kind, activities in which you can really do work on field. And we have some that we've been doing for a while here in the Chicago area, but we are looking into going places where things are happening. And in this case, for all of you engineers interested in sustainability, I think this was a perfect example. So what I would like to do now, we have some pictures and things rolling on the back so that you get an idea of, where we were, what we were doing. But I would like is just to, pass now to Chris, Lukasz, and Zach, for them to tell you about their experience, how it was, what they learned, whatever they want to tell you about it, so that we can actually start a conversation. We are trying to make these programs better and better, and I'm curious to see, would you be interested in something like this, so that, and you probably have questions that they are the ones to answer. And then I'm here, I want to introduce also Professor Kemp. You probably have met Professor Kemp before. She is the director of this student success for the College of Engineering. She works with me and others in the college to develop programs and opportunities for all of you to have that opportunity to do things outside what you do in the classroom every day. So this is really what it is about. So we have a whole group that we work in what we call the distinctive education, really to highlight all the things to enrich your education as you pursue your engineering degree. So the engineering thing is one of those programs, the Armor R&D, that actually offer you the opportunity to research with faculty here on campus. All of those activities that some of you have participated in those programs. So again, this is just a little note that look at what is available to you. It's important that you take advantage of all those opportunities, not just what you do in class every day. There's so many other things that will, give you a different view of what you can do with your engineering degree. Okay? So I think we go in any order.
I'll go first here.
I go to the corner.
Okay. Is this on? Can you hear me? Can you hear me out there? This is good? Okay. So my name is Chris Riley. This course was the last course I actually needed to complete my mechanical engineering degree. So I kind of thought, why not go out with a bang? But more importantly, I wanted to kind of gain perspective aside from mainstream media on what was actually happening in Puerto Rico, and look at the lingering devastation that was going on. I think when we were actually there, the death toll was somewhere around 64, and then Washington University did a recent research study and had that up to around 3,000. So the first day there was just kind of a meet and greet. I'll kind of do things in chronological order, kind of what we did here. So one of the first speakers that we met was Dr. Biblioni. He's the rector of UMet, which is a metropolitan university that we were affiliated with there. And he talked about the migration of the inhabitants and also the urban sprawl of the area. One of the second speakers was Emilio Zavala. He was probably my favorite speaker because he went through so much quantitative data. He had a lot of statistics on formal and informal construction that was done in Puerto Rico. He was also the president of the National Association of Home Builders. One of the third speakers we had was an architect. His name was Fernando Abrunes, and he talked about the construction development and sustainable development of buildings. He was probably the most animated speaker too, probably one of my favorite ones. And then finally we had Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz was the Director of Environmental Affairs for Caguas, which is where our main project took place. And he basically just kind of went over the municipality's project or progress through gaining energy efficiency. From there, we visited two different LEED certification buildings. One was the Collaboratorio of the Foundation of Puerto Rico. They had silver accreditation. The unique thing about this building is after Hurricane Maria, this building still retained the power and the Wi-Fi, so it kind of became a central hub for the area. They were able to complete around 230 missions, reach 150,000 people, give them fresh water. They were also giving them solar lighting, so they had light at night. Because even when we were there, had been almost a year, and there were still about 20-25% of people that still didn't have electricity throughout that time. From there, we had one other building that was platinum certified. It was Alvarez Diaz. It was an architectural firm. This was built on a historical site. It was owned by the Kellogg family. Mrs. Kellogg actually owned it and turned it into a girls' school. The most unique thing I think about this building was the solar tubing. So even in the back office, the president's office, there were no windows, no light whatsoever, but he had these openings in the ceiling that he can actually open up and gain fresh sunlight throughout the day. Most of the curriculum was held at UMet, which is the Metropolitan University I mentioned earlier. One of the first classes that we had there was on island relief and coastal resiliency building. So generally when you build structures, you may think of about a 30-year plan, something like that. But for these coastal regions, it's kind of important to even plan out further ahead, maybe 100 years, because you're going to have receding coastal lines, things of that nature. So we went and looked. We didn't get to visit it all, but there's roughly 800 coastal miles of Puerto Rico. I think there's 44 coastal municipalities. This is about 2.3 million people. A little over 61% of the population is all in that coastal region there. So the area we went to go visit was Louisa, and it was unique kind of driving out through this area because you saw a lot of these people, they didn't have electricity, and it wasn't because of Maria, but just in general, they just didn't have electricity out there. And we were driving through the evening, and you would see them coming out of their homes in the evening, starting fires to actually cook their meals, and this was just a way of life for them. So we went out in this area, and we kind of looked at the devastation of the beaches. We talked a lot about planting new vegetation to stop these wave surges from actually coming in and going down in the valleys up over the beaches. From there, we had another representative from Caguas, Mr. Torres. And he just basically explained about the 3 major roads that run through Caguas, and they get roughly 140,000 vehicles per day. So this was just kind of like a main hot spot there. And then Professor Johan, we all know him. He was a big impact to us. He went through and explained LEED accreditation to us. Is everybody familiar with LEED accreditation? Yeah, it's good? Okay. So a few points that he picked up on were, there's several different things that you can do with LEED. One is just kind of bringing in natural light to areas, and research study shows that there's about a 16% productivity increase just by bringing in this natural light, just by giving some of these workers a nice visual area. And also there's around 10 to 25% cognitive increase as well when you do this for your workers. And another thing he explained, so we went through LEED, and I was pretty familiar with that, but he also talked about building resiliency. That was one thing I wasn't particularly familiar with, and it's imperative in places especially like Puerto Rico. You want these areas that can be self-sustaining when all of the outside resources are kind of cut off from these areas. Humacao that we went to was probably the most emotional place. It was a small fishing village that we went to. It was on the southeastern tip. This was the ground zero for Hurricane Maria as it came in, and just kind of devastated the entire area. I mean, all of Puerto Rico was devastated, but this was majorly devastated. They didn't get FEMA assistance out in this particular area, and it took around 2 weeks for the municipalities to come out, the emergency responders, things of that nature. So the community just kind of had to pull together in this area. And the unique thing about this was a poor fishing village, and we went to a more affluent fishing village as well to look there at kind of the devastation. Here in the poor fishing village, I mean, you still saw the main dock was decimated. Houses were still, completely obliterated out in this area, as opposed to the more affluent area. I think they were doing some roof construction out there. We saw one pier that was missing. So it was a really, really big difference between that. Then we went to Old San Juan. We went to Bayahar. Bayahar was constructed in between 1854 and 1864. It was a barracks for the garrison that was protecting the fort there at the time. In the 70s, it became a hospital. Then currently now they have retail on the bottom floor. There's museums on the second floor. And then on the third floor, it's all government buildings there. They had a green rooftop at the time before Maria. They had koi ponds. They had vegetation. They had a complete photovoltaic array. The koi ponds after Maria, all the fish, everything had just been sucked up. All the vegetation was gone. About 3/4 of the photovoltaics were just ripped straight off the ballast. And we went up and looked. I think about the other quarter had been taken off, and they were just prepping it for the new that was coming in. And then finally was Caguas that we went to, where our main project was. The really nice thing about this was just how passionate they were about the community. They really, really cared about the well-being of just the population that was there. For our project, we looked at Emergency Relief Center, which was composed of a medical emergency center, Office of Emergency Handling, police station, and a community center. And we looked at making that LEED certified, but not only that, we wanted to make it more resilient, because this was going to be that area that all the inhabitants were going to go to once you had an emergency situation. But we looked at not only the buildings. You think of buildings when you think of LEED and you think of resiliency, but we also looked at the social constructs of the area and community outreach for the area. How do we inform all of the population what to do in case of emergency? So, basically for me, I think it was a very interesting approach, to the learning process. It was an immersion in culturally and emotionally compelling project. And one of the main things I think we heard from everybody there during the rebuilding process was how did they cut through the bureaucratic tape. There's a lot of resistance kind of against the government there as far as getting things done. But more importantly, I talked about LEED certification resiliency of buildings, but I think what really stood out to me was the resiliency of the Puerto Rican population and just how they were able to kind of come together after all of this even though they didn't receive a lot of assistance and things of that nature, and just kind of come together and rebuild. So that was pretty much my experience.
My name is Lukasz. For me, the entire experience for this class in Puerto Rico is amazing. It starts with the people that were running it. They made us feel very welcome and just made the experience that much more exciting. I know me and Chris were talking about, like, the first few days we were there, we were actually kind of homesick, but by the time we were done, we didn't want to leave. So it was great. The first week while we were there of classes was just a lot of information, basically getting a touch of Puerto Rico and culture and demographics and geography. The second week was more specific. We were learning more about LEED accreditation, which is leadership in energy and environmental design. That's what our main project was in Caguas, to make the building more efficient and resilient and sustainable. But what I liked about the experience is that it wasn't all work. I mean, from when you wake up from breakfast till about dinner time, you were in class or on a field trip learning. But afterwards, you got some downtime. We got to visit some nice places. We went to El Yunque, which is the rainforest over there. We went to Old San Juan, visited the fort. It was, not just school. It was also fun. But, it was just, I loved interacting with a bunch of new people and trying to learn in a different culturally environment. Because a lot of people have different views on different topics, and it kind of opened me up to think of a much more broader horizon in terms of coming up with solutions for environmental disasters and things of that nature. I don't know where else to go from there.
Hey, how's it going? So I'm Zach. Just to let you guys know, I wanted to start off my part to let you guys to mention that from just a student's perspective, if you were looking at this class as a catalog, the first thing that sort of popped out to me was that this class really doesn't have a lot to do with my major. So I'm finishing my bachelor's in chemical engineering next December. But I feel like this class on paper was geared a little bit more towards architectural engineers, architects, or civil engineers. But that being said, that doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot for me to learn from this class. So from my experience for the class, the two things that I always keep coming back and are sort of focal points of what roots out to what I learned was cultural immersion and doing very relevant hands-on projects. So the cultural immersion was definitely something that you could never escape, you could never run away from. Every moment when you wake up to every moment when you go to sleep, you were immersed in Puerto Rican language, immersed in Puerto Rican Spanish, more immersed in the culture, the environment, the people, and what's really going on in their lives. So it was mentioned that the project that we did was partnered up with UMet, and so it was us three, and then there were also 4 other students from Puerto Rico that we shared all of our classes with and were part of our project with us. You can see them in so many pictures. And then there was another student, too, from Venezuela who came with us, and that was being part of students and just community members in Puerto Rico, talking, listening to what they had to say, listening to what their day-to-day life was, and what not just that, but also what how they were taking this project, how they were hoping changes and things we were learning now would bring about long-lasting changes, was really exciting. let's see. And then the hands-on project was something else that I really enjoyed. So chemical engineers, like, we talk a lot about like process design, we talk a lot about like heat mass transfer, but in this class there was none of that in here at all. So everything that was in this class was something that I was learning completely from scratch. The only thing that I brought with me was a passion for sustainability and a real desire to learn about like how laws and social changes can bring about, like, can help push the green movement. But other than that, like, I came here like completely unarmed, and I walked away like learning a whole lot about LEED certification, learning about other sort of like green building certifications, and learning about sort of pushes to change that realm of thinking. So Chris mentioned Johan was one of the professors who was sort of our mentor as well, was talking a lot about resiliency. So we were actually we were sort of like a pilot project, not just for this program, but also to try and help incorporate like new changes into LEED certification, and that being like not only creating green buildings or green like walkways, green environments, but also creating buildings that were very resilient against like extreme weather events. So for instance, one great contrast I thought was great was whenever we went to Cuartel de Vallejar in San Juan, there's this huge old garrison that is still standing, like, you know, hundreds of years later. And during the hurricane, like, the building lasted. It was great. Before the hurricane, it was a real like green icon. I think Obama was in office at the time whenever all the big green changes had come to it, and he christened it like this new beacon of, you know, like green sustainability, and that it was helping lead the charge and, you know, trying to create a more energy sustainable future. And it did. It had like a huge photovoltaic array on top. It had huge windows, natural lighting, cross ventilation all over the place. They had just gone through, I think they were just about to like redo their entire AC system so it would become more modular. But as soon as the hurricane came, that building was nothing but just a building. There was no electricity. There was no way to use water anymore. There was no, it was just a large building. It could be shelter, but that was it. So it's a really green building, but it wasn't resilient at all. But on the contrast, like the buildings that we went to in Caguas, it's a very energy inefficient building. There's no photovoltaic arrays. There's very like poor building design as far as like trapping heat, keeping heat, using electricity. But during the hurricane, that building never lost power because it had an elevated diesel generator. It had rainwater collection. And that was one of the things that sort of stuck out, and was that you had this one great building that was built by the Spanish like hundreds of years ago and was very sustainable, but it wasn't resilient at all. Where on the other hand, we have a new building that's very resilient but not sustainable at all. And I don't know, that was an exciting contrast to see. And that was just a little piece of what we were learning about the hands-on projects, about trying to create or trying to help present new ideas or suggestions for changing how your buildings are designed and how to change like buildings that are already created in the avenue of thinking like LEED ways. Lucas did mention that there was a lot of fun to be had, and there was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
Even during class too.
Even during class, yeah. Like what was it? The animated architect, I always forget his name. Abrunias, yeah, he was a super, super exciting professor to talk to. I learned, I mean, just like, I think it was mentioned that some of the lectures and classes were in Spanish, and my Spanish is okay, but Monday? Yeah, but there were some times whenever Abrunias would start talking and he would be waving his hands, and that was more of what I was listening to than being able to follow. Like, I was missing like every fourth word of his in Spanish. So I was still learning a lot, and there were times when like we'd actually take breaks, even if there were things we didn't understand, the other students or our mentors were able to later pull us to the side. We were still able to sort of learn and get a quick recap of what happened. And yeah, that was exciting.
So one thing that was very important is that they spend the 2 weeks working and combined with learning and having some fun. But the team ended up putting together a report, which was a series of recommendations for the municipality of Kawa into how they will certify that facility. And I think this is something that they are implementing. So I think it's not just that you guys went, learned, and participated in a lot of what's going on. At the end, there was a product coming out of that, and there was a report that they're implementing. And there was, of course, the team effort of the three of us here. These are the engineers, but the other students were not engineers. They were architects. Somebody was studying urbanism, and we have actually a person who was in the social sciences. So it was a very interesting team. And then, of course, was the instructor from the university in different areas, and we have the engineers and the architects involved. So at the end, I think the municipality, the report that I got is that they are super happy with the product, with the result, and they're working on that. And I think this is something that I wanted to highlight because this is important. Kudos to you guys that were able to to participate. And what I hear from the instructor is that your contribution was very important. So I think that made me feel really, really good that our students who came here from Chicago did so well, and people saw it as a great contribution to the team. So yeah, I don't know if you guys want any other comments, any questions from the audience. I mean, we have some time, more picks and pops, so we can just spend some time just learning about everything. So.
Yeah, so we're not accredited to certify lead, but the engineer who we worked with was. The way we were working on it was more of a preliminary approach, and it wasn't the final accreditation. Because even though they didn't want to be LEED certified for that building we were working on, I think their main goal was to be resilient and withstand environmental disasters.
But it goes to the point that the engineers that they were working with are LEED certified, and that's what they do. So the municipality contracted them or wanted them to do it. I think that was not a contract. They were just doing this on a voluntary basis. But I think the important thing here is that, you were able to be part of that team, and of course, they're going to implement it. And implementation is going to be led by the certified people. But I think you guys were part of the team. So I think it's a lot of value.
The reason we use LEED is because it was such a good foundation for resiliency and sustainability.
Any other questions or comments?
What changes you decided to So, we kind of took this project in two ways. We made an idea for a completely new building if they wanted to build, or for a building to do some remodels and stuff. One of them was they had a very big AC generator that was just consuming energy. It was too much for the building they needed. So it's things like that to reduce some energy usage. There's a lot of problems with natural lighting. They had too much artificial lighting inside. There was
yellow lights. That was the one thing. I think that's the easiest implementation we can do for green design is going from white LED lights to yellow lights. They don't burn as hot, and they just reduce light pollution. And that I think is also part of just mental health.
Other suggestions we had made was ways to get to the community in case of an emergency, just how to respond the fastest, just be able to support other people in need. Because one problem everyone faces in Puerto Rico is that everyone knows need. So everyone has to help themselves before they can help everyone else.
A solar array for the top of the police station as well. And we also look at installing batteries in there that would allow that area to operate for 2 days without the use of electricity. There was special ballast that we also looked at that can survive up to, I think, 180 mile an an hour gust of wind as well, in case there was another hurricane. Yeah, we ran some numbers.
We kind of ran some numbers of, not specifically any data from the actual building and stuff, but just about a good estimation of what the numbers of the building currently are and where they want to put in the funds.
Oh, I remember the first year there, we had one lecture, or one day where we were lecture about climatology, and like sort of like climate change, how that was handling like weather, weather events.
I remember I learned something really neat with the coastal regions about how we were saying we were eroding and stuff. Just basic things to do, like implement vegetation to slow the process down, or certain design, just look at making sure coral reefs, for example, were intact because those provide so much protection from incoming waves of earthquake protection. There's just simple things like that that I never thought about vegetation to impact.
I think there was, like the corals, they were talking about the swells that came in, and they were able to take like key images of the swells coming in during the rainfall and I think right before they got to the very reef, the swells was supposed to be like 17 feet, I believe. I never heard it a little bit off, but I know that there was a huge dramatic difference in like the size of the swells before the reef and then after across the coral reefs and natural things. After the like really like integrated natural things against that stuff. Against the
We also have a question speaking about history and culture. The last day we were there, we actually visited the King Museum and did some fun activities. There's a lot of learning, not even just one of the days.
I think one like, little fact that people back in the day was we went from was that he lost his houses and then our parents was built. He was yellow on his roofs and they're supposed to be an actual defense against mosquitoes. So, oh yeah, there were a lot of mosquitoes. There were a lot of things. Yeah, so that's they will never forget that. I think going back to that other question that you had asked was what sort of changes you could do. I was thinking about how there's one of the things that like I really take for granted around here is like our grid dependency. So grid like infrastructure in Puerto Rico, this is big for a long time. It's been very like undertaken, not undertaken to the point where I remember like there were a couple days in classes where if it was raining, there was like a 50% chance of power going out. Here, it's not very often that you have like power going out in your house, and that was I don't know if there's a conundrum between like how much money goes into like update and revamp infrastructure, or would it immediately make more sense to try and make microgrids or just install like multiple like photovoltaic arrays all over the place to be able to bring power to people or power to the surface like that.
Also learned that the photovoltaic there was it's prime location to put that in actually. If you look at it here in the States, it's about a 15, maybe 20-year payback. There, the price of electricity is around 28 cents per kilowatt hour, so it's about a 7 or 8 year payback for photovoltaic system.
Yeah, we are looking. So the concept is we wanted to create opportunities, and that they are of different type and different in different areas, in different fields, at different lengths, and different locations. So this was a pilot, and I think what motivated this pilot was to go to a place where something happened. That the best way for us to learn would be going there and experience it. We heard in the news what happened in Puerto Rico. We heard the stories, and there is nothing like going there. And as you heard from them, I was there just for 2 days. But even when we were just landing, I mean, you landed in the island, and then you could see all these blue tops. So all the building and houses who have lost their roof, what they have done in the meantime, as they were planning to repair that, is they put some kind of a blue plastic on top. And so these are not real roof. As you landed in the island, you see that everywhere. You also see the devastation of the vegetation, where you could see, being destroyed. And so it is very compelling just arriving to the location. And then, I was with them just the first couple of days. And, I learned a lot by talking to all the partners and little visits that we did when I was there. They went to the fields later. And I think this is part of the concept. There is nothing like learning by doing, and I think our core into how we prepare engineers for the future is that we want you guys to be prepared to be able to work anywhere on anything, and also to be, to some extent, the first responders of the people who will know what to do in a situation. I mean, coming up with solutions. And I think, as we know, the technology that you get trained with is something that can go, very far. And there is nothing like practicing and having the opportunity to do it. So we choose this pilot because of what was happening in Puerto Rico. And, it's not, so we were talking the other day that maybe we need to go and see some of the issues that are happening in the, in some of the coastal areas in the Gulf of Mexico, where there is a lot of issues with contamination at this point. There are things like that. So, we, of course, in order to go to these places, we need to identify what is the content, who are the instructors, who will be the local partners, because the whole idea is that we wanted an experience that is very rich. And when they went there, they were not just there with a professor who went there to go and explore. They were there, and they were welcomed and received by different organizations, from government to foundations to educational institutions and volunteers institutions. So I think that was the core of the experience. And they can also tell you about their accommodations, so they can make a comment on where did they stay, which actually also opened the opportunity to interact with people. So the plan is, this was a pilot. I think we learned. I think we were very excited. We think it was a great success for the pilot that it was, but of course we could do things better. And so we are re-examining what happened there. We may go back to Puerto Rico again to do something of the kind, maybe at a different level. We are looking at other regions, other problems, other challenges around us that in which it could constitute a good experience for a group of engineers to go. So, I want you guys to stay tuned and wait. So what happened is, by November is when we're going to be listing and putting out there all the opportunities of what we do in the summer. We have many, many projects, sections of projects of this kind that we do here on campus or here in the city. This is the first one in which we go away from campus. So off campus. So we are looking for ideas, and I am very interested in building more and more partnership with other institutions in the world, so that we can actually maintain our global spirit. Because at the end of the day, the world is one, and remember, the air is the same we share. The waters are the same waters that we share. The contaminations that is happening in the seas in Southeast Asia is happening in there. We are not responsible for it, but that contamination is going to get to the coast of New York, before we realize it. So we all have the same problem. We all need to be part of the solution. And I think it is nothing like going and seeing it firsthand and have that interaction with the local people who are kind of struggling and trying to solve those situations. And I think that is of a great value for you guys. So I think, look at what we're going to be putting out there, and hopefully you will find one of those opportunities that will actually, will get your attention, and you will be excited to participate. You have a question? Well, I think that was, of course, one of the big things that we needed to figure out how to do it. I wanted to do this pilot and this experience in order that they could be affordable, because there is the question, So it was actually ended up being very inexpensive in the way we did it. We actually got a lot of the people local there. They actually donated their time and their facilities. Here at the university, we were able to secure a level of scholarship that was terrific. So actually, you guys, the student who participated got 3 credits, and they were getting almost like a 75% of a scholarship. If you have a scholarship, we'll apply. So I think these are the kind of things that we are very conscious about that, and we work that very carefully, because we want these to be opportunities that have a great educational value, but at the same time that is affordable to our students, because we want to participate. So, keep looking. I think there is a class coming in. They're early, because I think we have the room for another 5 minutes. But I think any other final question? Any final comment from you guys?
Yeah, you don't have enough funds, you guys are trying to figure out if you want to go or not.
So the general engineering account says like
Technically,
It's actually, they work very hard. They work from 7 to 7, and we really make sure that they have a lot and they meet all the minimum number of hours and all the activities. But they earn 3 credit hours in 2 weeks. That's actually, pretty. It's a great thing. All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys, for coming. Thank you so much for your comments and sharing your experience. And if you have any question as you look at the information, just feel free to respond to the email that will be given, or just to stop by the dean's office. I mean, we're always there to help you with that. Thanks again.